Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 13th of February 2017, and joining me on this edition are Assistant Editor Steve Withers.
Your membership to the Continental has been, by thine own hand, revoked.
Audio Reviewer Ed Selley.
No, I look retired.
And with feeling.
No, I look retired.
And special guest star Mark Botwright.
Oh, God.
Is that it?
You know Botwright, he's an out-of-context specialist.
Yeah, I'm sure it is in there somewhere, but yeah, I'm not going to
maybe like Mark last week, it wasn't actually a quote, it was just saying it.
Maybe. You still there, Mark? You all right?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm not the one I'm dosed up on cough medicine.
Neither am I. I'm on
tripping balls.
I'm on anti-congestions.
It was aliens.
Well, isn't that what they make?
Crystal meth.
Yeah, it's crystal meth out of that, doesn't it?
You require a couple of extra active ingredients, and I still have all of my teeth.
And a degree in chemistry, but apart from that, in real good.
Well, we could bring back Hodge's recipe of the week then.
Yeah, I pick me up.
Good stuff. Your MQA thing went down quite well.
Yes, it did, didn't it? I'm pleased at the response. We've had some discussions. We've, broadly speaking, made progress as a group of individuals. This makes it sound like a psychiatric evaluation, doesn't it? No, I'm pleased that people seem to have found it quite useful, and I'm pleased to see that there are people actually with MQA compatible equipment on the forum already. And I've started talking to a company actually today about getting a product in which offers a spot of MQA compatibility, and I won't say too much, but at a very reasonable price. So let's see how we go.
Okay, cool.
Ed, after last week's podcast, I did listen to some MQA content on Tidal. Even when it says master audio, that's what we're talking about. And even with my crappy internet connection, it sounded great. So
there you go.
Good news.
There's finally a small, tiny niche of the future that Steve's actually able to enjoy from the 18th century.
His internet connection is doing his very best to pull this whole call down. No, that's a problem. So if there's any issues with the recording, blame Steve. It's his internet. Right, so what else is going on? Did you see the Super Bowl at the weekend? Anybody?
I understand that the Falcons binned it, but other than that, no. It's just incomprehensible.
The funniest thing I saw was a photograph of Marky Mark Wahlberg leaving with his family, because obviously they're from Boston, New England Patriots fans. They left early when their side was 28 points to 3 down in the third quarter, and missed the best Super Bowl comeback of all time
ever.
Because in the space of 6 minutes of game time, they brought it all the way back and got an unusual 2-pointer to bring it to 28-28, so it went into extra period. And when you're in extra period, the first one to score wins. And who scored first? It was the Patriots, 34-28. Mr. Wahlberg will be fuming, because it's no cheap going to the Super Bowl, even for a well-minted guy like him. And I've done it before. I've left football games when we've been 3-0 down, and been halfway down the road and heard the cheers go up, and then heard another cheer go up, and you're thinking, oh no, what have I done? And missing a a comeback. But that is seriously a big comeback. That
that is well, I mean, I'm not a fan of American football, but I watched the highlights, and I've got to say, even for me, it was really exciting, and what a comeback. I've got to say, I've done something similar. I'm sure I'm not the only one who did this. When Liverpool were 3-0 down in that European Cup final.
Yeah, I went to bed.
At half-time, I went to bed, yes.
So did I?
Missed the greatest comeback in football history.
I did the same, and the thing was, right, I went to bed, and I was on earlies the next day. So I went into work at 5:30. Sat down in the briefing, and everybody's talking about Liverpool, and I'm like, yeah, it's a shame they got beat. And they're all like, what are you on about? The one? And I'm like, what?
What year was that?
I can't remember now.
2005.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
There you go.
See, I was in Hong Kong then, so it was very, very, very late at night, and I thought, I've got to stay up all this for this. And then when I got to half time, I thought, sorry, I'm going to bed.
Yeah, went to bed.
And unfortunately.
Yeah. So anyway, that was the Super Bowl. I didn't see it. I didn't stay up and watch it. I did watch the highlights, like you say, Steve. But I've got a feel for Marky Mark. Poor guy walking out when
I don't think you should ever leave until the final whistle blows, because, I mean, like most England fans, I am filled with an unreasonable degree of hope and optimism, and so they always think they're going to claw it back somehow. Obviously, in England's case, they never do, but you always think that.
I don't know. Last weekend, Crystal Palace at home to Sunderland when they were losing 4-0 at half time. What was it? A goodly portion of the home crowd buggered off at half time. It's like, we don't want to watch any more of this. And in fairness, they didn't miss anything. There weren't even any more goals.
I was tempted to do that once. We were sat Dundee United. We were 3-0 down come half time, and there was only maybe about 200 of us left in the away end, and we'd driven all the way up there for the away game, so we weren't going to go too early. And I've got to say, it was the best crack I've ever heard in my life, or ever had in my life, because it was just so funny. We just started taking the mickey out of our own team and all the rest of it, and it was really quite entertaining. But we did leave early. We left in the 80th minute, but away days, I don't miss those. And
quite.
As January's now out the way, and I won't be going to the States again till at least next January, I'm going to have to start on a new diet, but I'm really not sure about my eggs at the minute.
Have you got to have scrambled or fried or poached?
Cadbury's.
It's funny you should mention that. I happen to have a cream egg in my hand, which at some point during this podcast I'm going to
melt.
consume. The question is, how do you eat your Krabby's cream egg? Do you
this was a campaign. Yeah, this was a campaign a while ago.
Yeah, it was a good campaign, because actually there are a number of different ways of eating a Cadbury's cream egg.
I go for the one where I put it back on the shelf and buy something made out of chocolate rather than ventilate.
But that's only a recent development, is it not? I mean, it's been a few years.
Cadbury's has used vegetable oil for God knows how long, and it's like this entire country has some sort of collective psychosis where you can't taste sort of chip fat effect when it starts to melt. It's bloody horrible.
It's been a number of years since I last had one.
Cadbury's taste delicious to me.
It tastes wrong.
Totally agree with you. Totally disagree with you, Ed. It's give me Cadbury's over any of these poncy expensive chocolates any day.
I'm not talking about expensive chocolates. I mean, I know they're planet-killing bastards. Although that said, now Cadbury's is owned by Kraft, it makes no difference. Nestle chocolate is in every way, shape, or form superior to Cadbury's chocolate, and it's not more expensive. It's just better.
Don't like it.
But what did Nestle do?
Addicted to vegetable oil.
Well, what did Nestle
do?
They
don't put oil in it. I don't know. I don't care. I'm sure they've got an egg-shaped product somewhere. And anyway, if you want an egg-shaped product, all must bow to the Kinder Egg, because you get a toy at the end of it as well, and it's banned in the United States.
In a country where you can legally buy assault rifles, you can't buy a Kinder Egg. That just about sums up America, doesn't it? How many children die by gunshot wounds a year in America, and how many children have died anywhere in the world choking on a Kinder Egg?
It was quite entertaining, because they had because of Donald Trump's travel ban, one of the proper news organisations out there, Sky News, anyway, they had a list up on Facebook that somebody had linked to, because I don't follow Sky News. But it was really quite funny. It was how many people are killed by Islamic terrorists, how many Americans are killed by Islamic, and they are outnumbered by 10-1 by infants with guns killing Americans.
Yeah.
But that's it would appear that they're cool with that. So not a lot you can do. But I'm sorry, Cadbury's chocolate. It's it's a national psychosis. You're all wrong. You'll snap out of it one day, and you'll acknowledge me for the genius that I am.
Even dairy milk buttons.
All of them. They all have vegetable oil in, and they all taste wrong.
It's all palm oil, but I don't care, Ed. It tastes nice to me.
Oh, it's just grim.
Can we move on? Because I'm thinking about going and having some chocolate, and I really shouldn't.
Did you see that thing I sent you about the Reese's Pieces? That tweet with a kid in the States who had a serious nut allergy, but was determined to try it. So he basically grabbed his EpiPen, shot 2 doses into himself, ate the Reese's Pieces, and then turned around straight to a teacher and said, "I'm going to be really ill. Can you call an ambulance, please?" And it's like, that's the most hardcore thing I've ever heard.
Since last week's podcast, I have made a concerted effort to catch up on Ancient Aliens. And all I can say is you guys were bang on the money on that one.
Yeah, it really
I'm not
is.
saying it was aliens.
Was it the Egyptian one that you were watching, Steve?
I started off with the one about the Sphinx.
Yeah, that is so funny, because it so seriously starts, and they actually hit on problems that the archaeologists at this moment in time do have in terms of explaining that at one time it did have the body's too big for the head, and at some point there must have been some other carving on there and it was redone in the past or something like this. But it's just so funny. I mean, you can explain it, but you get so far into the episode and you're actually hooked with this mystery. You're thinking, this is something to get into.
Because I didn't realise until watching this. So it's interesting that there is some actual genuine historical information in there. I didn't realise that until the late 19th century, the Sphinx was buried in sand and only the head was visible. So they only excavated the rest of it later. And as you point out, Phil, they think it's supposed to be a body of a lion, but one guy was pointing out that it's not shaped at all like a lion's hindquarters. It's much more like a dog. And there's been in the ancient text they mention Anubis guarding the graves and the pyramids, and therefore it makes a lot more sense for it to have been a big statue of Anubis with a dog's head, and then later that dog's head was recarved into the pharaoh's head, and that kind of makes absolute sense. You think, oh yeah, that's interesting. Now the guy was talking about the weather erosion on the side of it, and maybe a lot older than people thought. So maybe 2,500 BC they remodeled the head, but it may have been built considerably longer than that. Maybe as much as 10,000 years ago. So it could have been talking about some sort of civilization that predates the pharaohs. You think, oh, that's interesting. And then they go on about, and of course, it's just like the other Sphinx on Mars. Excuse me? Can we just back up a second? And then
Hold
they
that
show
thought.
a picture from like the Curiosity or the rover. And it's a shot of a Martian landscape. And in the background, there's a couple of rocks that look a bit like the Sphinx shape, because they're bad resolution. And clearly it's just because the brain's designed to look for shapes in abstract, for some sort of uniformity in abstract shapes. And it looks trying to look for anything in things that don't look like they have any kind of pattern to them. And you're thinking, okay, right, they had me up to this point, but now they're just talking bollocks. And then they go on about pyramids being power stations and teleportation devices, and you're like, there's nothing to support any of this.
Yeah, and and
then the guy with the big hair turns up and goes, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. Anyway, I've watched 4 more episodes since then. It's quite addictive.
Oh dear.
I mean, to be fair, that there is some, you look at the theories and you think, okay, there's some of this is plausible. If we are to assume that there are aliens or other beings, it takes a long, long time to travel from planet to planet if you have the means to do that and the technology to do that. So it is plausible that at some point back in human history, we were visited by other beings. It's plausible. There's no evidence to say it ever happened, and there's no evidence to say it's never happened. It's plausible. But the way that these guys just take it so far, and so far off to... it's just...
Yeah. And I watched them on the pyramids. I mean, you made the point, Phil, that, there is a history, there's pyramid-shaped structures being built by different cultures in different parts of the world that have no connection with each other and all about the same time. So that's an interesting coincidence. Possibly there's some other connection. Also, there's a lot of ancient religions talk about the gods being physical beings that walked amongst us that were tall and this sort of stuff. You think, okay. I mean, you could make a case saying possibly there's some kind of ancient connection to some sort of visitation from aliens. But they just make these massive leaps of logic for which there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever. You're like,
So another thing is, up until that point in the program, you've had quotes from interviews with some really, leading edge archaeologists and all the rest of it. But as soon as the alien theory is brought in, all these interview clips suddenly disappear. And it's just really, really funny. Yeah, really good. Anyway, we need to do a podcast, guys. And we need to crack on. So, let's go to Mr. Botwright about competitions and what can we win.
Okay, we've got a Lego Batman movie merchandise bundle. That one's open till the 20th of February. We've also got a TV, a Sony 43XD80 UHD TV from AO. That one runs for an extra week until the 28th of February. And as is standard, competitions are open to all eligible members resident in UK, Ireland and Isle of Man.
And has anybody won anything?
Yes, we've got one winner, which is great. J. Daniel P. won the I Am Not a Serial Killer Blu-ray.
Good stuff. Congratulations to J. Daniel P. Well done there. Good prize, I think. Cool. I don't know. I've never seen it. Any good, Steve?
Got very good reviews. Got very good reviews from Sharina, which is at the cinema. Said it was excellent, and it stars Christopher Lloyd. So yes, quite looking forward to that one.
Great, Scott. Right, okay, so hardware news. Let's move on to that. And SkyQ adds Dolby Atmos, Steve.
Yeah, they had an investor meeting last week, or earlier this week, sorry, should I say, at the time of recording, where they laid out their sort of, their roadmap for the next few years, in fact. And unsurprisingly, given that BT have just recently started using Dolby Atmos with their Ultra HD sports broadcasts, SkyQ will be adding it as well, although no exact date has been mentioned yet, but it's certainly in the pipeline. They're going to add Dolby Atmos. Not a massive surprise. Clearly they were going to follow suit at some point. Just good to see that it's in the roadmap. It's going to happen. There were a couple of other things in the roadmap too, but they were being very vague about those. Some couple of new features that are in the pipeline. We don't know what, but certainly it looks as if, as we've often said over the last year or so, that with SkyQ, Sky is kind of playing catch up quite a bit with what's been happening over at BT in terms of the features and technology involved, as opposed to maybe the content. And this is the next step, really, adding immersive audio to your Ultra HD 4K picture.
But I guess problem here is how many SkyQ owners are going to have the facilities to listen to Dolby Atmos.
Funny you should mention that, Phil, because by a striking coincidence, I have just reviewed a Dolby Atmos soundbar. So you're absolutely right. Obviously, the big issue with Atmos is how do you get it into the average living room? Because most people are not going to be down with sticking speakers on their ceilings. I think the Haas in particular are going to be resistant to that particular trend. So the alternative is to use what are called upward firing speakers. These actually bounce sounds off the ceiling and down onto you, and you get the impression that there is a speaker above you, and that's where the sound's emanating from. Now, of course, this approach does require you to have a ceiling, and not some big vaulted ceiling, but a flat reflective ceiling, relatively, not too high above you. That is one requirement, but otherwise it is quite an effective solution. And I have tested some upward firing speakers, worked really well. And I've also reviewed Samsung's HW-K850, which was an Atmos soundbar that had the soundbar at the front with drivers at the front for the front three channels. It had two upward firing drivers for the overhead channels, and then it had wireless rear speakers with built-in upward firing drivers for your rear channels and rear overhead. The product I've just reviewed is the HW-K850. So this is very similar to 950, but doesn't have the wireless rear speakers. So what you've essentially got is a soundbar at the front with a subwoofer, and you've got 3 forward channels and 2 upward firing channels. So basically what you're getting is a 3.1.2 Dolby Atmos experience. Now that might think, oh, well, I'm not getting the full experience then, and obviously you're not. But I think it's approaching the subject in a realistic fashion. It's saying, well, not everyone can put an AVR in their house. Not everyone can put literal speakers overhead. Not everyone can necessarily have a 5.1 system with upward firing speakers as well, like with the K950. So what they're trying to give you and give people is an Atmos experience with the minimal amount of equipment in your lounge. And I think, having a soundbar at the front and just a subwoofer has certainly been very popular with people over the last few years. And that's nothing that's going to be, too onerous to put into your lounge. And it does give you a semi-Atmos experience. Now, I think we need to be clear about this. For Atmos to be a full Atmos experience, you really need, as a bare minimum, a 5.1 system and overheads and 2 overhead channels. If you're going to direct sound around the sound field, you need the rear channels as well. So with this soundbar rather, you do get a sense of overhead channels, but it is very front heavy, obviously. I mean, the sounds are all emanating from the front. Now, it does try and create a more immersive effect by having sounds coming from the sides of the soundbar to sort of create more width to the front sound stage, but you don't have the rear speakers. You don't have the rear overhead channels either. So very front heavy sound stage. However, for those who do want to get a sense of immersion and a sense of an overhead experience from Atmos soundtracks, but don't want to be putting speakers at the back of their lounge, that just want a soundbar at the front, it is a viable alternative. It does work. The upward firing drivers do work. I've got a test where there's a helicopter flying around and it's flying above your head. It's very much, as I say, towards the front of the sound stage, but it is flying around above your head. The soundbar itself is actually very good. It's very similar to the 950. It's quite a large soundbar, but it sounds very good with TV and dramas and documentaries and music as well. Has Samsung's multi-room system built into it. Has plenty of features. It's got HDMI inputs and outputs as well. The sub is quite effective and it's a little bit heavy, the sub. It's a little heavy-handed, and you need to sort of position it carefully and also bring it down a little bit with the subwoofer level control, I think. And you generally need to bring up the overhead channel slightly to give them a little bit more impact above you. But I certainly found it to be an effective combination for delivering a semi-Atmos experience. I wouldn't say it was obviously a full Atmos experience because, as I say, there are no rear channels. But I think if you're in a situation where you want something like that, but you have limited space and you can't put speakers at the rear of your lounge, it's certainly an alternative that's worth looking at. And it's £850, which isn't cheap, but you are getting a pretty good soundbar as well as the Atmos experience itself. And my only criticism would be, and this is the same criticism I would level at the 950, whilst it handles Atmos no problem at all, it only accepts 2-channel DTS, which clearly does preclude a large number of Blu-rays.
Here, I suppose the question. I mean, I've got to be honest. I haven't read the review or anything. And the last one of these soundbar reviews I did read was the big Yamaha one, the YSP 5600. I mean, do they have thinking in lines of how possibly less committed enthusiasts might choose to use these things? Do they have a convincing ability to sort of Atmos up non-Atmos material?
They do, actually. In fact, I've always surprised because there's a thing called Dolby. It's called Dolby Surround, which is a little bit confusing because that's obviously not what it used. That's not the old ProLogic system or anything like that. Dolby Surround now is the upmixing aspect of Dolby Atmos. So it will channel certain sounds to the overhead speakers. And I have to say, it's surprisingly effective at creating an Atmos-like experience from a soundtrack that was not mixed in Atmos. And quite often you will get a very noticeable overhead effect for something, say it's a plane flying over something like that. It really does work. And it's not just placebo effect or me imagining it. There is a genuine overhead experience. And so that aspect is quite clever. The Yamaha that you mentioned, Ed, obviously is a good single source solution, i.e. there's just the subwoofer. I'm sorry, there's just the soundbar at the front and a subwoofer if you want to add one. The problem with the Yamaha is twofold. One is it's massive, absolutely massive. So you need a bit of space to install it. And obviously you also need a room that is conducive to bouncing sounds off side walls and rear walls and ceilings. So it very much depends on your layout as to how effective it's going to be. The big downside to the Yamaha is it doesn't accept, it's got one HDCP 2.2 HDMI input and it can't pass 4K HDR. So it's a little bit limited in terms of that aspect, which I think was slightly short-sighted on the part of Yamaha. It's also really quite expensive.
Yeah, it was more the case. That was the last one, and I remember just thinking, it's obviously, in part because you did mention repeatedly in the review that it's massive. I was thinking, well, do the extra features that make it massive, can you at least get more use out of them than dedicated Atmos material? Because obviously at the time that one was done, there was no prospect of any terrestrial stuff either. So
no.
That would have been particularly pressing, but obviously it's good to see that it is slowly going into more sort of widespread use.
As things stand, I've yet to see the perfect Atmos/DTSX soundbar solution because, as I say, the Yamaha does Atmos and DTSX, but has certain limitations in terms of passing 4K HDR. The Samsungs both pass 4K HDR and do Atmos, but don't do DTSX. In fact, don't do anything beyond 2-channel DTS, which is, again, from the point of view of Samsung, slightly limiting. So we're still waiting for the ideal solution where you have both Atmos and DTSX in a soundbar that can pass 4K HDR as well and HDCP 2.2 as well. So at the moment, there isn't an ideal solution yet. I'm sure we will. There are certainly plenty more. I know, for example, that there are soundbars coming out from Philips and from Sony that are Atmos enabled, and the Sony one definitely does both DTX and Dolby Atmos. So I think we are going to see solutions that do meet everyone's needs coming out quite soon. And quite interestingly, where it's priced. But I think for Atmos to be accepted in the average living room, there needs to be a relatively simple and unintrusive way of delivering it. And I think a soundbar solution is obviously the one that's most likely to succeed.
Yeah. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I don't think it's a particularly contentious statement.
I guess the big thing to get across, Steve, is the price in a minute. I think that's the big barrier.
Yeah, because even the 850 at 899 quid isn't exactly cheap. I mean, you can get a pretty good regular soundbar for a lot less than that. So you are paying a sizable premium at the moment for the.
At that price, you could get a decent AVR, not Atmos, but you could get a pretty decent AVR and probably a 5.1 speaker set system for that as well.
You absolutely could. Yeah, you can get an Atmos, a DTSX AVR like the XT300 from Denon. That's less than £500, so £499 I think it is. Yeah, and then get in a good 5.1 system, and you'd be looking at about the same kind of price point. And although obviously that does go back to the point I made at the beginning about if you don't want an AVR and you don't want speakers all over your lounge and this sort of stuff, and you want something that's going to be a single source solution, and less intrusive, then obviously that may not be an option. But yeah, if you want a real Atmos experience, then you really need to be looking at a bare minimum of a 5.1 system with upward firing speakers, ideally 5.1.4 or 7.1.2 to really get the full Atmos experience. But I guess this is a stopgap product designed to give people a taste of Atmos without necessarily involving too much mess. But but it isn't cheap, and none of them are cheap at the moment. They're all currently quite pricey. So you're paying a fair premium for the experience of Atmos at the moment, which again could preclude it from being that popular.
Of course, we're talking about today's technology. If we look at yesterday's technology that's still being sold, and I mean turntables and other analog devices, Edward, Ballfinger have launched a new reel-to-reel tape machine, budget machine as well, isn't it?
Yeah, yours for a mere £23,000, subject to the exchange rate staying where it is, which is unlikely to. Yeah, there's two things going on here. There has been, and when I use the word resurgence, I mean from a basis of almost nothing. Reel-to-reel tape has been slowly creeping back into a sort of fringe usage in both home and professional use, and I'll cover those two things separately. Home use, it is capable, and Phil will come on to this in a moment because he actually has some personal experience of this. It's capable of exceptionally high performance under quite demanding sort of requirements. It's nonetheless it is a truly high resolution source if used correctly and you pay attention to it. And up until this device appearing, your only options were to refurb a machine which would be the better part of 30 or 40 years old. So this is at the very least going to introduce an option to buy new, and there is another one due later on this year from a different source, which is under sort of a weird embargo at the moment. So it'll as and when that turns up. This machine, they're at pains to stress, is aimed predominantly at professional users. Now, most of the reason that such a thing would exist in a professional sense does come back to vinyl, in so much as whilst it's perfectly possible to create a vinyl record from a digital master, indeed it's done all the time at the moment, there's an argument that if you want to do it properly, or at least as it was, it has to be recorded and mastered in the analog domain, and then from there transcribed to an acetate. So this machine is going to help you do that, and it's going to be on a studio basis, it's going to be an altogether more relaxed process, relying on a brand new machine with a warranty made by Germans than something which has been kept in one piece by a man in a shed. So there is that. It is unavoidable that the company's called Ballfinger. That's
the main reason this is on the running order, isn't it?
It's not the greatest. It's unfortunate, isn't it? It's one of those ones that is just not. There are certain hi-fi companies already in the market. I mean, one hesitates to be childish, but I can't help but think of Von Gaylord valve amplifiers at this point.
Isn't there a company called Shit as well?
Yes, there's Shit Audio.
Yeah.
Although they've taken that and run with it. They know full well what they're doing. The other one is the Japanese tone arm, which is 12 inches long, hard, slightly curved, and called the Glands. That's
but
just
you always
unfortunate.
remember them, though, don't you?
This is very true. I don't think in this instance it's going to make too much of a problem for Ballfinger, because it is it's a very, very cool piece of kit, and if that's what you're after, then you may as well go for it. I would also say that I don't know about you. I don't think of this. It's not a sexual thing. I just envisage Auric Goldfinger rather than Ballfinger. I just have a sort of fat man with a Germanic accent in my mind, and that's definitely not sexual.
I mean, the thing with reel to reel is that I guess most people, and I'm talking like the vast majority of people who have ever seen a reel-to-reel machine, will have seen probably a domestic reel-to-reel machine from the 70s or very early 80s, which is when they kind of fell out of favour. But reel-to-reel tape and reel-to-reel tape players come in all shapes and sizes, and definitely in the professional side of the industry for a long, long time, reel-to-reel or multi-channel reel-to-reel was definitely the place to be. I mean, there's an awful lot of very famous albums and all sorts that were recorded and stored and still stored on reel-to-reel, professional reel-to-reel machines. And I learned to edit on a reel-to-reel by actually cutting and splicing the tape, and then cutting your next bit of tape and then sticking it together with a little bit of it wasn't sellotape, but it was editing tape. So yeah, that's how I learned to edit as well back in the day.
So you don't miss that now.
No, I don't miss that now. Could you imagine the podcast having to be edited on reel to reel? It'd be a nightmare. There'd be bits of tape hanging from the ceiling and all sorts. Well, this bit goes here and that bit goes there. And I mean, digital and non-linear via computer is just completely different to back in the day where everything was done by hand. But that's how they would edit a lot of albums and stuff as well. They would all be spliced on a tape machine. Obviously, our high quality multi-channel tape machine. But if you look at even albums now, it's all done on tape originally. I know quite a few groups who will not go to digital straight away. They want it on tape before it goes digital.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, in terms of if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I just don't want you to dick about with the digital copy that I will end up listening to because I'm not mad, there are actually quite a few albums doing the rounds as perfectly serviceable digital copies that kicked their life off, as Phil says, in the analog domain. It shouldn't make any difference to what you're hearing. So if you're a normal person, don't worry, this isn't going to mess your life up. It's simply changing one or two little studio practices, but provided that the people using the equipment know what they're doing, the results should be genuinely excellent.
And if you want to get into reel-to-reel, I don't know what the prices are like now, but certainly back when I was interested in it, you could buy from ex-BBC studios and so on. You could buy machines from there. I don't know what it'd be like now, but just going with some prices I've seen online recently for the turntables, Ed, the old Technics SD10s, they're going for silly money at the minute. So I would imagine that any reel-to-reel, whether it comes from a professional side or old consumer side, it's going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah. Pretty much anything from the high-spec manufacturers, so Studer, Revox, Teac, Pioneers weren't bad. To say, I mean, if it's got the word Nagra on it, it might as well be made out of solid gold. I mean, they've just gone bananas. So yeah, it's an expensive pastime. So if nothing else, the presence of a brand new, what appears to be exceptionally high-quality machine as a standard available item for £23,000, that at the very least introduces a fixed benchmark to what people can charge for used ones. So, you know, there is that. It's exactly the same thing that Technics 1200s have been doing once now the new ones have turned up.
Ed, it's so funny that you just mentioned that. It's not like it's been scripted in any way in the running order. But yes, the new Technics, it's nice to see that there's going to be a 1210, because I always preferred the 1210 over the 1200. For those that are not in the know, the only difference is the 1200 was silver and the 1210 was black. That's the only difference between the two of them. But pricing, it's not as eye-watering as we thought it was going to be.
No, it's not. It is
cheap, mind you, but it's not.
No, it's not. Let's not be childish here. £1,299 less cartridge is a lot of money, but this is still in some ways more like an evolved Technics SP10 in a single chassis than it is the old SL-1200. So this is actually still a very, very high quality piece of equipment for what it is, and it is competitively priced in terms of the levels of performance it's notionally offering. In terms, if you look at other sort of, if you like, one manufacturer items where if not necessarily the cartridge, the deck and the arm are available as a single piece, it goes up against offerings from Clear Audio, from Roxanne, from people like that, and I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to wind up somewhere very, very near or at the top of the pack. The good news is that we're going to find out for ourselves, because I have elbowed my way into the queue for review samples on this one. So as soon as we can, we will get one in for the forums and have a look. And if there's any justice in the world, it will be a 1210 rather than a 1200. But we'll see. I dare say we won't be able to be completely choosy on that one.
It's just a shame we can't get our hands on an original Mark II.
I can.
You can
probably. I'll have to check. I don't think anything significant's been done to it. Let's put it like that. It might have had a change to the power supply.
So that might be a nice little comparison piece to do within the review. You know, how does it stack up against the Mark II? Because they have done a lot of new things with the new turntables. So it's expensive, but actually they have changed the platter. They've messed around with the motor. You know, they have done things with the tone arm to make it a bit better. So it might be interesting to see in a comparison with the old Mark II, which is what everybody will remember with the Technics, just how much of a step up it actually is. Because the old Mark II sold at, I think it was $399.99, and it never went up significantly from there. I think over the years it maybe crept up to about $450, but it was never an expensive machine, the original Mark II.
Well, no, I'll see what I can do. I know someone that certainly used to own one, so let's see if it's still there and if it can be purloined for a couple of days so we can make some meaningful comparisons. I might even be able to swing 2 identical cartridges to do it.
That'd be cool, and then ask him if he's prepared to sell it after that, and I'll take it off his hands.
We'll see. But no, let's say, I mean, I know that there's a lot of people who are looking at how much the line old production stuff went for, and they're going, why the price increase? I cannot reiterate enough. Internally, these are not the same devices. They're not being built out of the same components. They're not being built in the same way, in the same place, and they're not being aimed at the same people. So it's a bit of an odd one, but it's, I suppose, in the same way as looking at a 1976 first generation 3-litre 911 turbo, and then looking at the sort of more current generation, going, well, the new one is nowhere near as cheap or exciting, and it's like, yeah, but they are aimed at subtly different people. They just look quite similar.
Yeah, it's like the E-Type and then the Eagle E-Type, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's actually a very good analogy. So yeah, can mine keep that one? It's all brilliant.
It's only that there's only 10% of the listeners are going to get that one though.
Well, I don't know. We're all about the elite.
Yeah. Okay, Ed. Right. And what am I looking at? Yes, the next thing is something that's published on Nerdist. Right. So a company, Ed, will once you're gone, obviously, not before. They will press your ashes into a working vinyl album.
And do you know what? I think that's a really good idea. Essentially, looking at the pictures involved, it appears that they're using there's a particular pressing that's been made available. Originally, it was developed so that it could have an incredibly thin film of liquid in it. So if you have a look for, there's some copies of the Alien soundtrack which have got a sort of green liquid, the same as the cover, that moves around inside the record, but it stays, because it's completely filled with liquid and it's simply an oily and a denser liquid moving around. It remains perfectly balanced. I think what they're doing here is they're impressing the ashes into something which then goes into this same cavity. So what happens is a very small quantity of you, or what passed for you, is put inside a record, and then you can have 30 discs pressed with 24 total minutes of audio, 12 minutes on each side. You have to supply the sound, and I don't know what the copyright rules of just like nicking a load of tracks actually are.
This is brilliant. So all it would be is your edited rants from the AVForums podcast.
Yeah, that's what
on both sides. And I can just picture it in the next 40, 50 years. And you got Will saying to his kids, go and put Grandpa on the turntable. And it's just Ed ranting away.
Well, that's box set of vitriol.
Yeah, you'd have to pay. It's actually, do you know what? I want all 30 discs will have something. We'll just have a different rant on them. But yeah,
it could start as well with your voice going like, "Hello, I'm Ed Selley, and I'm dead now, and I don't know what the hell happened."
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because let's be honest, keeping people's ashes around is fraught with problems. You know, if you knock them off the mantelpiece, that's just horrendous. You know,
I think
Hollywood has taught us
getting used as an ashtray.
Yeah. I think the modern thing now, though, is to spread the ashes, isn't it? So it's not to hang on to them. I think that's the popular trend these days, anyway.
Well, it is, but the problem is that runs into problems of its own. I remember some years ago that St James's Park, the ground for Newcastle United, had to stop people having their ashes spread at St James's Park because players were going to ground and coming up with a significant quantity of X person affixed to them because it was sort of actually lingering all over the grass. So I don't know. I quite like the idea of this. It is $3,000, but I mean, you know, funerals cost a bomb anyway. So I just quite like it. As I say, the only question, if I wasn't going to just have my collected rants and works of angriness, is what material I'd actually put on my 24 minutes of audio. But I think it's quite imaginative, if nothing else. People, the article in question was questioning whether it's macabre. I don't think it's any more macabre than anything else you can do with dead people.
Yeah, totally.
Is it 12 minutes each side or 24 minutes on one
24
side?
12 minutes each side.
Yeah, so it's like a long play. It's like a 12-inch single.
It's like an EP, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Blue Monday.
The biggest selling 12-inch of all time, and it lost the money on every one they sold.
Yeah, they lost money on every single copy, didn't they? That was brilliant. That was really
well done, boys.
Yeah. Factory records. Yeah. We'll never see the like again.
There was a thread that was started in general chat this morning about someone who doesn't like the idea of either being cremated or decomposing in the ground. And it's like, how can I be preserved? And it's like, well, that's
frozen.
Well, the good news is there is actually one company left in the world that does proper old school mummification. The bad news is it costs from $67,000.
Does that come with a pyramid then or something? It's quite expensive. They wrap you in some swaddling cloths and pull out your guts through your nose.
The overall cost of your funeral and mummification services can vary greatly and depend on the selections you make. Things to consider are the type of funeral service, the mummification process, the mummiform casket, and the sanctuary or mausoleum.
Or they charge by the pound or something like that.
Or you may choose to have your burial casket sealed in a triple reinforced protective vault. I don't think that doesn't sound cheap.
Where is this vault?
Hold on, I'll try and get the contact details. Where are they?
This sounds like a Las Vegas company. It really does.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They're
nice front, and then they'll push you down a cliff at the back.
They're close. They're in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, you see, there you go. It would be American. So that's quite expensive. But actually, how much was the vinyl, Ed?
$3,000.
$3,000. Now that's quite cheap when you look at, especially if you look at what's running on daytime TV these days, where they claim it's £7,000 for a funeral.
I don't think this includes them sticking you in the ground. I think you have to present them with the ashes post cremation.
So you've still got to get all that sorted. For the cremation. So you couldn't have the bonfire in the back garden then.
No, there are strict rules about that.
You wouldn't get anywhere near enough heat.
Nobody told Luke Skywalker that.
Yeah, well.
Well, clearly you did a piss poor job judging by the state of that mask in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
I've got to say, my funeral will cost me nothing because I'll be dead and I don't care.
What was it like
that is most definitely somebody else's problem.
If you really do not want to spend any money at all, generally speaking, if you donate yourself to medical science, they cover almost, I think, pretty much all the costs.
Hand it back, I'm pretty sure, but I'll try that.
No. You can be in a truly decrepit state. And,
they'll take anything. They're no fussy, Steve, at all.
No, the neurosurgeons will have a crack at anything from memory, because we used to have to walk through the cadaver school to attend. I used to have to walk through the cadaver school to attend a lecture for my course every Monday, and you had to go up in a lift that was shaped to carry stacked dead bodies, so you just used to have to stand there single file in a line, 5 of you, whilst it went very slowly up to the top of the building.
The thing with that, Ed, is the smell, and it's a smell that once you smell it, you'll never ever forget it. And I've been in loads and loads of posts, obviously during my as a result of my old job, I have to add here, I've been in lots and lots of post-mortems and all that kind of thing, and I've visited the morgue on numerous occasions, and once you get that smell in your nose, it's just a smell that never goes away.
No, I know exactly what you're saying. I do know that. Although I generally speaking, you only got the whiff of them in the more preserved sense of the word. But
Ed, where do they keep the cadavers then? That was an interesting pronunciation of the word you're using.
I'm still heavily medicated, but not insufficiently medicated that I'll still hurt you when I see you at Bristol. I don't know exactly.
Physically.
Both. They were in a. There's a freezer in the basement of the King's College building where they're sort of kept in cold storage. But I mean, I was good friends with a bloke who was studying dentistry, and it would. I mean, the dentists I think it's fair to say that when you're just simply encountering a disembodied human head, it already seems faintly surreal. But yeah, if you do donate yourself to medical science, be under no illusions that you're going to be treated with anything other than an absolute lack of respect from the word go. So, it's
It should be just like my life then, basically.
Yeah, totally. That's just what I was going to say. Where's the difference? Right. Do you think we've gone far enough off tangent that we can bring it back around, maybe? To something resembling a podcast? Hey, let's never say that the AVForums podcast is never at the cutting edge of something.
Always one message.
And as we're going on to films next, and the next film being released next week, there's a hell of a lot of coffins and funerals as a result of his actions. So it's film news next. So, Steve, if there was ever a film where the body count mattered more over the killing of a dog and the theft of a Mustang, it has to be John Wick. And Chapter 2 looks like the body count's going to be twice as big.
If they follow the usual rules of sequels, yes, it would be even more killing. Although I'm not quite sure how they could fit even more killing into John Wick than they already have in the original one. And as you quite rightly point out, Phil, I think it was Honest Traders who counted the number of kills in it. So they kill his dog and they steal his car, and for that he kills 72 people in order to get at the son of the guy who used to be his employer. So excellent. Yeah, I've seen the trailer. I don't really know much about the plot, but I think it's a safe bet to assume that it will involve lots of people trying to kill John Wick and John Wick killing lots of other people in turn. Which is great because I personally really, really enjoyed John Wick. I thought it was I've got a soft spot for good old school revenge thrillers. So something terrible happens to a person and then they kill an infinite number of people to get their revenge. Love it. But also I thought Keanu was on top form, best performance he's given in years, and the directors really, really know how to handle action. It was none of that shaky cam, multi-cut rubbish. It was all done in single takes or with with proper static shots. It looked superb. It was beautifully staged. Each action scene was different from the other one, so there was lots of imagination in there.
Yeah, a really, really clever use of the sound mix as well. So, like you say, it was all about 3 or 4 minutes in one location, and then 3 and 4 minutes in another location. But each time the location changed, the music track changed, as well as the sound mix changing. And like you say, the action just kept going. Though it was just relentless. It's the choreography that goes into it. I mean, let's get this straight. It's not a family-friendly film. It's not
by any stretch of the imagination.
There's not a lot of plot. There is not a lot of plot whatsoever. He's after one person and that is it. There's some really quite nice touches in terms of the hotel that they go to. So, the hotel is off grounds. So, as soon as you go there, you can't be killed and you can't kill anybody else. It's sacred ground. And
I quite Hitman Underworld, isn't it?
Yeah, and I quite like that aspect to it, and I like the aspect that that they all group together, and there's different people have different methods and all the rest of it. They all know each other, and it's like a business, and I really quite like that aspect. But there's not a hell of a lot of plot, and there's just a hell of a lot of violence, and I would say gun If you like your guns, and you like choreography, stunt choreography, fight choreography, it's a film for you. If you like headshots, it's probably the most amount of headshots I've ever seen in any film.
With the possible exception of was it Olympus Has Fallen, where there's an awful lot of headshots in that one too.
But that's from like 200 yards away, and you're thinking, you never in a million years would you get a headshot from that distance. Yeah. Never.
At least most of John Wick's kills are up close.
Yeah, well, you're talking like a foot away with a 9mm headshot, compared to Olympus Has Fallen, where he's got a 9mm handgun, but he's picking people off with headshots from like 200, 300 meters away. It's like, give over.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like in the sequel, which appears to be from the trailer release, takes place in Europe. They do delve more into that sort of netherworld of the assassins and the hotel, the Continental, and the money that they use to pay for this gold coins that they use to pay for transactions and the cleanup crews. So if it's going to delve more into that world, I think that'd be quite interesting, because that was definitely the part of John Wick that was original, because obviously the rest of it is basically just, as you say, fight sequences and fight choreography and gun porn. But the sort of the underlying mythology of the world they created in John Wick actually was really interesting. So I'll be up for a bit more of that. A bit more any more Ian McShane's always good news as well.
And hopefully they got some money this time, because the ending on John Wick, it was good from a sound mix point of view. Lots of rain and punches and stuff in the rain. I'm not going to spoil the end, but there was a Camaro used in the end, which didn't have an exhaust. So it was little things like this where they hadn't put stuff back in. So the stunts were done for real, but you could see that there wasn't any engine or exhaust in the car that went over the side of the dock. And little things like that where you could see they were cutting money from the budget. And like I say, the ending was very, very low key to what had gone before in the night, especially in the nightclub scenes. So hopefully they've had a bit more money for this one. I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm actually going to go and use my unlimited card on this one on Friday.
Yeah, I'll definitely go and see.
And I'm definitely going to go and see Lego Batman.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
So that's my unlimited card paid for itself this month if I go and actually do see that, because I went and saw Trainspotting again. I had no intention of doing it. Really? But I was driving past the Metro the other day and I thought, I'm going to go and see it again. And I just went in, and it just so happened there was a screening 10 minutes from me walking in. So I went to see it again.
Didn't you go and see La La Land or something like that instead? Was it not playing?
It was playing, but it was an hour and a half's wait. And that's dangerous with a Five Guys next door.
I was going to say, just go to a Five Guys and kill an hour.
Well, no, because I'm supposed to be on a diet this month, you see, so I can't do that. I've got to try and... Yeah, that's what I mean. It would have been murder for me to do that, because I would have gone to Five Guys and I would have spent a lot of money, because it's not cheap. So it would have been pointless on the unlimited card if I was then going to spend 13 quid on a burger. You know what I mean?
In that case, it was the logical choice. And as you say, you're getting your money's worth, and it's something you've prepaid for. So given you're now spending all of your other disposable income on super unleaded, then no. It's not getting any super unleaded. It's getting normal unleaded, 95 octane, nothing more going into it than that. Fair enough.
It's a big American V8 lump, and when we were in Vegas, the highest octane you could get from the pumps was 95 octane, so that's good enough for it. It'll save me 6 pence a litre.
No, I'm not arguing if that's what. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that. So.
Yeah. Have you got yours yet?
No.
It's going to go on all year, isn't it? Have you got yours yet? No.
I suspect it is. Although that said, they are now. If they don't get their arse in gear by February the 18th, I was actually looking at the small print. I can actually walk away from the contract if they having put in a delivery date of X, they then exceed it by 1 month. Then I could just tell them to get stuffed. I mean, that would then mean I have to start the whole bloody process all over again.
What you do is you start pushing them for comp. Yeah. And I had to do that with the Mustang, because they made a real mess of the paintwork, and they've actually came back yesterday and said they were going to pay for it. So I've been really impressed. A lot of people knock Ford dealers, but actually I've been quite impressed, and they've been a damn sight better than Audi have been recently. So I was quite impressed with that. So I'd push them for comp, and you'll probably get it.
No, that's fair enough. We'll see what happens. Right now, I just want it to I want to get a shot of the other one. I mean, as has been, it's got. The old car has got a leak in the oil and the two of the wheel rims. The tyres themselves are fine. It's the actual air.
Do you really want to discuss this on the podcast where potential buyers could be listening?
Yeah, it's fine because it's one of those things where, depending on how negotiations go, I'll either sort it out or not. It's just all part of the agreement thing. But I couldn't be asked. The foot pump, the old foot pump died, so I've actually bought a one of those ones that plugs into the 12-volt socket because I'm lazy, and it's one of those things where, do you remember the juicer in The Simpsons? It's like, I can barely hear it. It's whisper quiet. It's exactly the same thing. On the box, it's got almost no vibration, practically silent. It's like, if you're Brian Johnson from AC/DC and you are deaf as a post, I'm sure it is whisper quiet. Or for everyone else, it's like, oof.
You live next to the runway at Heathrow, so it's normal for you.
Yeah, it's very, very loud.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if John Wick uses one of them or not. But anyway, let's get back. Blu-ray releases this week. What can we go and buy? And I did go and buy a disc. I'll tell you what it was in a minute.
Okay. There is Trolls, animated feature with the voices of Anna Kendrick and Justin Timberlake about, obviously, Trolls, which I've not seen, but it did quite well at the box office and has had some half-decent reviews as well.
Are these the toy trolls with the long hair?
Yeah, the ones with the big hair.
Right,
yeah,
okay, yeah,
those kind of trolls. Yeah, yeah. So that's out this week. So one for the kids, perhaps. There's also Keeping Up with the Joneses, which I actually saw on Ultra HD Blu-ray at the weekend, and it's basically the premise is that there's an average family in a cul-de-sac, and a family moving next door called the Joneses, and they begin to think that they might be spies because their life's just too perfect, and turns out they are spies, and then comedy and action ensues with Zach. Christ, what's his name? Zach Galifianakis or something?
Galifianakis or whatever.
Yes, him. John Hamm, who used to be in Mad Men, and Gal Gadot, who currently plays Wonder Woman, who I've got to admit is as fit as a butcher's dog, so good enough reason to watch this film. It's mildly entertaining, reasonably amusing, sort of action comedy that I quite enjoyed, although nothing special on Ultra HD Blu-ray, I have to say. I've also got Bloodfather, which is a thriller with Mel Gibson that Kaz reviewed at the cinema and said that it good performance from Mel, terrible performance from the actress playing his daughter, unfortunately, but a sort of semi-decent thriller. And part of his rehabilitation, really, that's been going on until recently, and now sort of reached fruition with the fact he's now nominated, Oscar-nominated directorial performance on Hacksaw Ridge, which is actually nominated for Best Film Oscar. So Mel's having a bit of a rehabilitation as far as Hollywood goes after quite a few years in the wilderness. And then finally, there's a new TV series called Quarry, an HBO series. With season 1 is coming out on Blu-ray this week as well. And that will also be a competition prize in the near future.
Okay.
Are we talking very briefly about television just before? Because there are some things. I don't know if anyone else has watched this. I want to seek responses from anyone on the podcast who did see it. Last night, Sky One showed the first episode of the new MacGyver, which it was very faithful. Very faithful to the original. He doesn't use guns.
He has a mullet haircut?
Yes, he does, and a leather jacket. And he
Did
does.
They just make it out of the old one?
Do you know what they have? They have played it very faithful to the original. They've still got the same weird sort of ethereal synth bit at the start of the music, although they don't actually go for the full impressive 80s theme tune, which I think is a big disappointment. But it's I watched it and it's shit, but it's quite enjoyably so. So I'm given that I'm on my own on a Wednesday evening because my wife does a show choir at that point, teaches. That's not does in a Debbie Does Dallas sense. I might actually stick with that at least for a couple of episodes, see where it goes. I just want to see if anyone else has seen it and see what they think.
No, I don't have Sky.
And then I don't know if this is on your list of BT channels. I didn't know I had it until I saw an advert. Forces TV, which doesn't bizarrely appear to be anything to do with the Forces. They have started showing every episode of Airwolf again. And it's been at least 3 or 4 years since I last watched Airwolf, so that's absolutely brilliant.
Is that the channel that keeps showing the repeats of Ross Kemp in the SES drama thing that used to do on ITV?
I've never watched anything else on there. I haven't the faintest idea, Phil. All I've come to watch is them blow up the same 6 helicopters every week. Because that was what Airwolf was all about. It is expensive
to blow up helicopters, so...
Yes.
That was always the good thing about Battlestar Galactica in the 70s, Airwolf, Knight Rider, the A-Team and so on. They always used the same material over and over and over. And all they would do to make it different would be reverse it. So it was travelling in the opposite direction to what it was.
Since you just mentioned Battlestar Galactica, Phil, it's probably worth mentioning that Richard Hatch sadly died this week.
He did, didn't he? Yeah.
Captain Apollo in the original series, yeah. Another one gone. Dropping up lines.
UHD Blu-ray update. So my local Tesco's has suddenly started selling UHD Blu-rays, Steve, £20 a pop, or 2 for £30. And they've got all the Sony titles and the majority of stuff there in a couple of cardboard stands at either end of the entertainment section. I noticed that the other day, and I forgot what I bought now. the one with Marky Mark.
Oh, Deepwater Horizon.
Deepwater Horizon. So I bought that yesterday when I was in, because my coupons came through through the door head, extreme couponing, and I'd actually made £20 in Tesco Club card points. So I had my £20 and I went and bought a UHD Blu-ray. But interesting to see that Tesco's now, and that's a Tesco extra store, has UHD Blu-rays for sale now, and they were mixed in with the normal Blu-rays as well in the chart rundown area as well. So they had almost all the new releases. So it's interesting that Tesco are doing that. It could just be an experiment and they might disappear from the shelves in a few months, but at the moment you can certainly go in and buy a lot of the new stuff, and they're all £20.
That's good news, because that suggests that Ultra HD Blu-ray is reaching a certain point of mass market penetration. If it's in your Tesco's at £20 a pop, that sounds good news. Also, if you've bought Deepwater Horizon, you are in for an absolute treat on the Dolby Atmos side of things, because that's got a stonking Atmos soundtrack.
Yeah, I read that on the forums actually, Steve. I didn't get that from you at all. I read it on the forums. I saw a lot of people liked it, so I thought I'll get that.
Yeah, all right. Ultra HD Blu-ray releases. Okay, so already mentioned two of them actually. As I said, Keeping Up with the Joneses is now available on Ultra HD Blu-ray in this country, and Trolls is also coming out on Ultra HD Blu-ray. And if you're a big fan of John Wick and you want to watch the original version, the first film, that's out in the States at least this week.
But you see, my problem with that, Steve, is that the Blu-ray is absolutely stonking in terms of picture and sound. So there's no real step up, because it's not 4K DI, is it?
No, it's 4K DI actually, but I think if you own the Blu-ray, there's not a huge reason to. Although it's pretty cheap actually, it's only like £14 on Wow HD. So yeah, it is a 4K DI though, so it might be worth getting for that reason alone. I probably will, for obvious reasons, pick it up. What else has been announced? No, there haven't been any big announcements actually. So, in terms of
so we're still waiting on some good stuff coming through. Then some decent.
Oh no,
films.
actually, do you know what? Columbia / Sony Pictures, who own things like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Lawrence of Arabia, they have announced the Smurfs to go with the Smurfs 2. So that's good news.
I can scarcely contain myself. You and I differ heavily on good news, but
yeah, I think that was tongue in cheek. At least I'm hoping it was tongue in cheek.
Being sarcastic at that point. Although, do you remember when we were talking about? I was talking about this too with the the chief technical officer from Sony Pictures, and he started going about how great the disc was and how the blues looked like, had this like certain, I don't know what he was talking about, like purple tinge to them and all this other stuff, and I was like, yeah, I was only kidding. Didn't really want to talk about this.
Yeah, you can't really be sarcastic with the head of the studio, though. That's the problem, Steve. He actually thought you were giving it praise, and that's why he can't. Yeah. Right, so that's UHD Blu-ray news. Super Bowl, like we said at the beginning of the podcast, which seems like it was a week ago. It was the Super Bowl over the weekend, and one of the big traditions, apart from the halftime show, is the adverts. Now, we don't get to see the adverts, obviously, over here, because it's only on the American networks, but you always have companies who will spend a year's marketing budget just on their Super Bowl slot. And you get some really quite entertaining adverts and all the rest of it. But the thing that struck me, Steve, and I've watched it a few times now, it's only 30 seconds long, if that, is the new teaser for Stranger Things 2. It looks amazing. I keep looking at this trailer, and they don't give much away in it. It's only 30 seconds, if that. But it's just, my God, I cannot wait to see it. It's actually made me want to go and watch the original again.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly. Because Laura hasn't seen it yet, so I thought it's a good excuse to watch Stranger Things again. And also, unfortunately, we have to wait till Halloween in order to actually see it, because that's when it's going to be up on Netflix. So it's quite a while to go yet. But the shots of like the kids in their Ghostbusters outfits and all that kind of stuff really sold the whole 80s vibe again. And then there was a very brief shot of Eleven opening her eyes. So
she comes back anyway, and there's some. You don't know if it's a dream sequence or not, but there's they open a door and look outside, and there's some massive alien-like creature on the horizon.
I'm sure it's going to be great.
It just looks fantastic. It really does. And did you notice that the title started turning upside down?
Yes, but didn't they say that the world's going to get turned upside down? Something in the tagline?
Yeah,
it's the upside down. Obviously, if you haven't seen Stranger Things, well, why not? But if you have, then you'll know what we mean by the upside down.
Yeah, so that's Stranger Things 2. It looks like it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I can't wait for that coming along.
I did quite, just on another Super Bowl advert, not a film one. Did you see the Budweiser one?
Now, I've made a point of seeing the Budweiser one every year, but I don't know if I saw it this year or not. Just tell me about it.
The All-American Beer Company, it was one slightly two-fingered salute to the 45th President of the United States.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did see it. I did see it.
Which I thought was, do you know what? I thought it was quite well judged. It doesn't stop their beer being revolting, but nonetheless, good call, Budweiser. Quite nicely done. Just a little reminder that, broadly speaking, unless you happen to be Native American, you are part of a nation of immigrants. So, no, I thought it was quite slickly done in a short space of time. Quite impressed.
Excellent. Good stuff. The other Super Bowl adverts this year are so forgettable that I did watch the reel, but I can't remember any of them. The only thing I can remember is Stranger Things. That's the only one that stuck in my mind.
Not even Christopher Walken.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Christopher Walken. Yeah, that was brilliant.
Doing NSYNC lyrics.
And the other one was John Malkovich, the John Malkovich one, and he's on about some guy called John Malkovich taking johnmalkovich.com and he's not happy about it. It's so funny. It's just him sitting talking to the camera, obviously the camera being the computer screen, and somebody playing his daughter, and it's just so funny, and it's swearing all the way through. It's all bleeped out. It's brilliant. So yeah, I forgot about that one.
So the teaser for there's a lot of teasers for the stuff that's coming out in the summer, wasn't there? Things like the new Transformers movie, which looks diabolical.
It just seems.
So, not expecting anything else.
No, but it's just so pretentious this time. It is just absolute.
It's total pish.
It is total pish.
There was a nice. A film I am looking forward to, I have to say, is Logan, the Hugh Jackman's final turn as Wolverine, which has gone in a very different direction.
You see, when that was advertised to start with, Steve, it just came up with Logan on, and it didn't have any characters in it. It was a teaser for a few months ago when I first went to the cinema with my unlimited card. I thought it was a remake of Logan's Run. That's what I thought it was going to be. I was so disappointed when I found out it wasn't.
Yeah, you must have been gutted when it wasn't a remake. I'd love them to remake Logan's Run. Yeah, no, but it's basically Wolverine, but it's set in the near future. He's lost his power to heal, so he's aging and hurting, and Professor Xavier is suffering from dementia now. I know it sounds like, as I think Mark put it in a previous podcast, it sounds like a comic book version of Last of Summer Wine, but it does look like they've taken it in an interesting direction. It's R-rated, it's a lot more violent, it's more swearing in. It's obviously taking a leaf out of Deadpool's book, but without the irreverent comedy. So it'll be interesting to see if that works, and also nice to see Hugh Jackman's performance.
The trailer to me just seemed so dark, and there didn't seem to be a lot of happiness in that film.
Any laughs in this one. Yes, it is, like I say, it's a very different direction. It's gone sort of slightly more the darker direction that DC have taken their stuff in, but without the po-faced, slightly bombastic approach of the DC movies. But I think it'll be, if it works, if it can tell an emotional characters, I think that would be an interesting experiment.
Did anyone see that Viz letter about Professor Xavier?
What? Yeah, if he can move anything, why can't he move his legs?
Yeah, he'd just be floating in the air with his legs flopping about.
Okay, so that was the Super Bowl trailers, and also previews to stuff that's coming up at the cinema over the summer. Of course, we'll look at that in more detail in the weeks and months ahead, because I'll need to use my unlimited card, so we'll need to find out what's worthwhile going to see at the cinema. So we'll be looking at what's the big summer films are going to be. We also have Easter coming up, which is normally the first sort of blockbuster time of the year, isn't it, Steve? Round about the Easter break. So it'll be interesting to see what's been released around then.
Well, May, you're going to have April into May. Don't forget, you've got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I think you'll be looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
There's some really big movies coming up over the next few months. I was just looking at the schedule, funny enough. Sent an email by Dolby about their Dolby Atmos mixes coming up at the cinema. So, running through it, looking forward. I mentioned Logan a minute ago, but Kong Skull Island, I'm looking forward to that one. Ghost in the Shell should be good. The Fate of the Furious, obviously. Alien Covenant, the new Mummy film with Tom Cruise, Transformers, Spider-Man, Homecoming. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy, A War of the Planet of the Apes, which I'm looking forward to, and also finally, after many, many years, an adaptation of Stephen King's The Dark Tower, or the first part of an adaptation of Stephen King's The Dark Tower. So some really big titles coming up between now and the summer.
Okay, good stuff. So that wraps up the podcast for this week. My thanks to Steve Withers.
It's okay. Let's go home.
Ed Selley.
Not if you're drinking here, you're not.
And he was here, Mark Botwright.
How good is your laundry?
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums for latest reviews, news and videos, and of course leave us those 5-star ratings on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again, hopefully, next week.